Hey, we're on. So I'm just going to introduce myself to those who've just joined in. My name is Mary, and I'm the health educator here at Arthritis New South Wales. And so for some of you, I have met in previous webinars. I'm seeing some new names here, and I look forward to meeting you as we go through tonight's webinar and hopefully in future webinars. Now, we're covering sleep and arthritis today. I'm just going to put this out as a reminder that this presentation is providing very general information and advice, and we've gone through the effort to make sure that all the information is evidence-based, it's backed by research, and so it's not here to substitute as treatment advice. And if you have any questions regarding your own individual health or condition or treatment, just make sure they're always going straight to the doctor or your main healthcare provider. Now, being on Zoom, I know we try to keep this interactive, engaging, so I'm always going to be asking questions to you. If you have any questions for me, please don't hold back. Use the chat box, which you can see in the panel at the very bottom of the screen or the top of the screen, wherever it's located. Use that chat box to ask your questions, because I'll go back and revisit those and try to address them at the end. I will also leave some time at the very end so we can share some tips, tricks, everything about sleep. If you have questions, feel free to ask away. Being on Zoom, we can forget our microphones are on. Sometimes it can cause a little bit of feedback. So just make sure that all your microphones are switched off and then muted. There'll definitely be a time to switch those back on. So what we're going to do today is unpack how chronic pain and arthritis and sleep all interact together. So what's really interesting in the context of arthritis, which is relevant to all of you, is how sleep hygiene can positively help us better manage our arthritis, pain, and well-being. So what we're going to do is we're going to start by talking about the importance of sleep. We're going to delve into some basic science of sleep, and then even deeper into the sleep-wake cycle, if you've heard of it, and then how lack of sleep can, I guess, negatively affect our pain. The reason we cover all that is so then we can look at some simple solutions in how we can actually improve our sleep. So I'm going to start by asking you all a question. Why is sleep important? So let's write in the chat box.
Another chat box.
Devin, I heard you a little bit of feedback coming from your microphone there. Do you want to tell us why sleep is important? You can help us out as well. It's important for waking up feeling refreshed. Absolutely. Restore our bodily function, has a very important role for that. Rejuvenation. We definitely know that once we've had a good night's sleep, we wake up feeling a lot more rejuvenated than what we would if we didn't get enough sleep. Recovery, helps with pain. There's a lot of benefits that come about from sleep, but we'll go back and we'll talk about why we actually need sleep. And so everything we know about mammals, everything we know about humans, is that sleep is one of those things that are absolutely vital to our survival. Just like we need water, just like we need food, oxygen to breathe, we need sleep. And so over the years, we've done a lot of research to help us understand the benefits of sleep. Turns out there's a lot of different ways it serves us. And so what we know so far is that it helps repair cells, tissues, it helps promote good physical health, it helps us recover when we're injured or when we've used up a lot of energy in the day. It's also very crucial for well-being, helps us feel refreshed in the morning, as some of us said, helps recover from mental fatigue. We know that good sleep can actually help with improving our memory and processing information. Sometimes when we don't have a good sleep, we know that maybe we do tend to forget things a little bit more. Maybe we are notorious for forgetting where we've left our keys or our wallet, and that usually coincides with a poor night's sleep. When we're sleep deprived, we can also feel quite cranky, but we notice a difference once we've had a good night's sleep. We feel really rested. We have better control over our emotions. We feel more control of our moods. And it can also help the body regulate many, many hormones that are involved in our metabolism, controlling our appetite. Who here actually finds themselves getting quite snacky throughout the day, going for the sugary treats around 3 or 4 p.m. when they've had a poor night of sleep. We have hormones that control our blood sugar levels, blood pressure. I guess when all of these are out of balance, they can wreak havoc on our bodies in a number of different ways. And this is why we don't just say sleep is good for good health and well-being. It's actually really important for reducing our risk of chronic diseases. So I've got a poll for everyone. How much sleep do we need? The big question. I'm getting some saying 7, some saying 8, 6 hours. More because I'm older. You'll a chance to have a go at answering the question. A lot of us are saying 8 hours. I'm going to share the results. A lot of us said 8 hours. Some of us said 6. Some said 9. A lot said 7 hours. And so sometimes there can be quite some variation for people, given that some people need less sleep. Some people need a lot more sleep. But here we have standard guidelines. And these here are the guidelines for what we should be aiming to get on a regular basis to promote long-term optimal health and well-being. And so what we know is that 7 hours seems to be a general consensus amongst many sleep professionals. And although you may be thinking, I'm doing fine on a lot less sleep, I don't need that much sleep. The fact is a lot of us can actually cope with less sleep, but for good long-term health, it's often a lot more than we think. And so it's very easy for us to underestimate that and how much we need. But there's always going to be a difference between getting enough sleep and getting good quality sleep. So sleep is vital for good health, well-being, surviving. Quality sleep is what's going to be rejuvenating and restorative. So there's a little bit of a difference there. Now, let's talk about circadian rhythm, which is also known as the body clock. So our body has its own internal clock. It regulates everything in our bodies, every process, every behavior. Sleep is just one of those things. Poor body temperature, hormone production, eating habits and digestion, alertness, sleepiness, timing of sleep performance. Our body clock controls everything. And our body clock, known as the circadian rhythm, is actually synchronized to a 24-hour cycle. And so it works really hard to align the internal environment with the external environment. And that's why it's always responding to a day-night cycle, social cues from the day, work patterns, exercise patterns, all of these our body clock is continuously responding to. And so basically this body clock is controlled by a special part of the brain. It's called a suprachiasmatic nucleus, but we're just going to call it a master clock. We don't need to go down that path and call it by its technical name. But With this part of the brain, it's largely influenced by light. But what we don't realize is that this master clock is also continuously responding to the more subtle cues throughout the day. So it's when we exercise, when we eat, if we're socializing with others. The thing is, if we're having a super late dinner, who here finds it really hard to go off to sleep, you know, earlier in the night? Or if we just finished watching a movie, we've just watched a juicy episode of Married at First Sight, who finds it really difficult to go straight to bed and fall asleep? So this is all because of the influence it's had on our master clock. This master clock is here to anticipate the best time to go to bed, best time to wake up, eat, be active, socialize, and all the things in between. But it works closely with the sleep cycle to actually control our sleeping patterns. And so they work together to actually regulate your body's natural patterns of sleep and wakefulness. So the sleep cycle is typically divided into rapid eye movement and non-rapid eye movement sleep. These two types of sleep make up a single sleep cycle, and both of them are equally important to healthy and restorative sleep. To better understand our sleep-wake cycle, it's really important we go through and we look at what the 5 different stages are and what's happening when we enter them. So in stage 1, non-REM sleep, it's basically the first stage of the sleep cycle where we're transitioning from wakefulness to sleep. It's basically our bodies preparing for rest. Super easy to be woken up at this stage. Stage 2 isn't that much different. The only difference is that your heart rate is starting to slow down, your breathing rate is starting to slow, your body's temperature begins to drop. Now, in a few slides, I'm going to go back to this thing about body temperature and why it's so important when it comes to getting a good night's sleep. So we're going to hold that for a minute. Stage 3 and stage 4 non-REM sleep is also known as slow wave sleep. So this stage is when the deepest sleep occurs. Now, you're really far from consciousness at this stage, but the brain is experiencing very slow brainwave activity. It's also the stage that is going to be supportive of our repair and recovery. It's basically when our body is working on rebuilding that bone. It's restoring our tissues, repairing our cells, it's strengthening the immune system. This is when all the good physical recovery takes place. Moving into the REM stage of sleep, it's also known as the dreaming sleep. It's actually very close to consciousness. And so if you look at the brain in the REM stage, you'll see it's very close. It basically looks like an awake brain. The only difference is that your body becomes paralyzed and it prevents us from acting out our dreams. Now, if you're someone who finds yourself awakening through the night, it's actually very normal and it's very common. It's usually happening once we've finished the sleep cycle. It usually happens in this REM stage. And this is why when we reach this stage, we're dreaming, we might find ourselves awakening soon after that dream. Your brain is so active at this time of the night. And so as the night goes on, the sleep cycle gets shorter and shorter, and it ends up being dominated by our REM sleep. So what's happening here is that each stage of sleep serves different functions, and a complete sleep cycle, it usually lasts around 90 to 120 minutes. It repeats multiple times throughout the night. And so what I want to show you is that in the next one, during a typical 7 to 8 hour sleep, you can expect to cycle through those sleep cycles about 4 or 5 times. And so this is what it actually looks like. We've got a schematic here. This is an example of the typical up and down patterns of the different sleep stages we actually go into while we're asleep. When we sleep, we cycle through different depths, and we typically cycle through these deeper and lighter stages of sleep every 90 minutes. The pattern of this up and down can be fairly predictable for some, but for others, it can be a little bit more sporadic than this. And now this pattern of up and down will look very different between children, adolescents, and older people. And so at the top here, you can see we've got wakefulness. It can take about 7 to 10 minutes before we get into the lighter stages of sleep. So you can see it's dropping off here. Now we've got stage 1 and 2, which are very light stages of sleep. And then we've got the deepest levels of sleep at the very bottom, stage 3 and 4. Now, it can take anywhere between 20 and 40 minutes to enter these deeper stages of sleep. And this 90 minutes, at the very end of this 90 minutes, we'll enter our REM sleep. What we can actually assume from this schematic is that this is a representation of an older person's sleep cycle. Why do we think that? Because it's actually dominated by the REM sleep. So we can see that less time is spent in this stage 3 and 4 sleeping phases, but you can see towards the end, there's a lot more time spent in the REM. And you can see the timing at the very bottom here. You can see this is starting at 10 p.m. This is roughly 6 a.m. Now, as we get older, it's very normal that we have less and less time in stages 3 and 4, our rejuvenating sleep. Now, what is very interesting here, I said I'm going to come back to core body temperature. Now, what a lot of us don't realize is how much of a significant role it actually plays in terms of regulating the circadian rhythm and largely influences the sleep-wake cycle. To put it simply, our lowest point of core body temperature is often at 3-4 a.m. The highest point of our core body temperature is actually during the day and early evening. Now, what's interesting about this rhythm is that the pattern looks very similar to the one I just showed you. Can you see how in this picture, up and down? It's almost matching this schematic right here. So you can see a very similar rhythm. The dip in body temperature is not only a biological driver that helps promote the onset of sleep, but it helps us actually maintain it, and it helps us to get to those stages 3 and 4. As for our highest body temperature, it seems to actually correspond with alertness and wakefulness. And so has anyone actually noticed that in the summertime, when it's super hot, it can be really hard to get to sleep? Has anyone found that? Is anyone here a shift worker or studies late at night? And so you notice the sleepiness usually catches you around the 3 to 4 a.m. mark. All of this is actually biological. Our body temperature, our circadian rhythm, and our sleep cycle, they're all deeply intertwined. The next part of, I guess, our circadian rhythm and sleep cycle is the cortisol and melatonin relationship. Two very important hormones that actually follow the day-night cycle and control things like sleep. But did you know about their effect on pain perception as well? So cortisol is something that receives a lot of bad rap. Usually it's because it's associated with chronic elevated levels causing chronic inflammation and exacerbating inflammatory conditions. If you've read Facebook, if you've read news articles, you've probably heard this of this cortisol hormone and how it has negative effects on the body. What it actually is, it's a natural steroid hormone that helps our body adapt and build resilience against stress. This is why it's actually known as the stress hormone. So it's produced by our adrenal glands, and you can see that the highest levels of cortisol are early in the morning. That's what's going to help us feel awake. It's what's going to actually get us up out of bed. And so its role is, it basically gradually declines throughout the day. When it's in check and when it's working correctly, it's following our daily rhythm, it has a lot of anti-inflammatory properties that, that it has its role in suppressing pro-inflammatory molecules and helps basically reduce the sensations of pain. So this hormone is actually able to help reduce pain signals. So this means that when cortisol levels are elevated, our threshold for pain is a lot higher as well. So it's said to help us, be less sensitive to the painful stimuli of arthritis. It helps us adapt to the pain of inflammation we feel in affected joints. So it's a hormone that we all need. It has its benefits. Don't let the word stress hormone scare you in any kind of way. Melatonin is the other hormone it works closely with, but you can see it follows the trend in the opposite way. So melatonin helps regulate our circadian rhythm and synchronizes sleep-wake cycle with night and day. So melatonin is usually produced when it's dark or when you're in dim light. It's there to help lower our core body temperature. And it's also known as the sleepy hormone because it's produced to make us feel sleepy. Now, melatonin is very interesting because there's been a lot of research in this area, and they found that in different parts of the nervous system, including the spinal cord and the brain, they share very similar kind of receptors that receive pain signals. And so it's suggested that melatonin might have a role in modulating pain by the way it interacts with these receptors. Now, I want you to really pay attention to here is that cortisol is meant to be peaking in the morning, and then melatonin is meant to be peaking at night. So they work in the opposite way. That's what really helps regulate our circadian rhythm. It also helps regulate those sleep cycles. There's been a lot of research into the area of melatonin supplementation to see how it works for pain relief. Now, for certain types of pain like migraines or neuropathic pain, it might have a role, but our research so far is very limited and it's very weak. So we don't quite know why, how it works. We can't pinpoint the mechanisms, but all we can do is make these observations, and that's what the evidence is based on so far. There's a lot stronger evidence to suggest that because melatonin can actually help promote a better night's sleep, it can help with reducing pain perception. And now that link between reduced sleep and pain perception is something we're coming back to, especially because I think some of us actually want to know why is it that we get pain that comes on worse at night. So are we following so far? Are we feeling okay with the circadian rhythm, the sleep-wake cycle? Are we following along? If you have any questions, please feel free to post them in the chat. So your circadian rhythm and sleep cycle are influenced by many, many things, internally, externally, biologically, physiologically. We have alcohol consumption, screen time, medication. We've talked about temperature, even sunlight. What you're seeing on this list are just some of the things that disrupt the natural wake-sleep cycle and interfere with the natural production of those hormones we just mentioned. What's really important to distinguish, though, is whether it's a result of a sleep disorder, is it behavioral, is it your lifestyle, could it be your diet? So there's a lot of different things that could be impacting on it. And so I'm going to ask you all, do you know what stops you from getting enough sleep? I'm going to give you a couple of minutes in the chat box to tell us what you feel prevents you from getting enough sleep. Great. So we're all kind of aware of what would be contributing to sleep disturbances and disruptions. If you're a shift worker, if you have chronic pain that prevents you from getting to sleep, if it's your environment, sometimes when you actually know what stops you from getting enough sleep, it can put you in a better position to actually try and achieve more sleep and have the conversation with your doctor to assess not just your sleep quantity and understand what could be going on, but also that sleep quality. Something I'm going to talk a little bit more about is this thing here at the top called napping. So there are a few theories that we have that help explain the mechanisms of sleep and daytime napping. And now I'm going to go to this concept of sleep pressure. It's sometimes referred to as sleep load, or you can see here that we've got a homeostatic sleep drive. The principle of this is that the more hours we spend awake throughout the day, the more sleep, the more you're going to need sleep. And so this is what we call sleep pressure. You can see at the bottom here, we've got the time across the day. And you can see in the awake phase, we've got basically these arrows here that represent the gradual increase of sleep pressure that accumulates steadily throughout the day. And then what happens when we get to a point in the night, you start to get tired. And so when these arrows start to decline, it's because they're starting to see reduced sleep pressure. So it's like this balance between sleep pressure and I guess wakefulness and the desire to sleep. So if we were to, I guess, stay up late past our bedtime or continuing to stay awake through the evening to 2 or 3 a.m., what we'd see is a continual increase in these arrows. You see that sleep pressure accumulate and get higher and higher to a point where, you know, we need to go to bed. We need sleep because of the accumulated sleep pressure. So we continue to build. On the contrary, if we were to have a nap earlier in the day, maybe it's because you had a poorer night's sleep that you need this nap. And sometimes in these cases, naps can be very rejuvenating, very refreshing. However, if it's a part of your routine, it's not necessarily a need. If we're going to be napping around 3 or 4 p.m., what's going to happen is this sleep pressure is going to decline and it's going to push it out longer. So that's going to take longer to build up that sleep pressure that is going to contribute to that tiredness that we need to get to sleep. Does that all make sense? So I'm sure we can all appreciate the fact that we don't sleep the same as what we did when we were children or adolescents or even young adults. In older age, some of the common challenges we see are to do with that increased daytime napping. As we get older in the later years, daytime napping becomes more common. And so usually this is due to changes in the sleeping patterns that we saw on the schematics earlier. And we see sleep become more fragmented during the night. Sleep latency, it does refer to the time it takes to fall asleep after getting into bed. With age, the time it takes to fall asleep, it does tend to increase. And this is due to a number of different things. It could be due to the daytime napping. It could be due to the decline in producing melatonin, that sleeping hormone. As people age, we also tend to experience more frequent wakings during the night. Sometimes it's caused by hormonal imbalances. Sometimes it could be caused by the medication we're taking or a medical condition. It could be caused by the discomfort we're feeling in the joints and inflamed areas. When we have these frequent awakenings, it actually prevents us from going into those restorative, deep stage 3 and stage 4 sleep stages. So we're not getting the rejuvenated sleep that we actually need. As I kind of mentioned before, 3 and 4, do tend to naturally decrease, and REM sleep starts to dominate. And this shift can really contribute to less restorative sleep as we get older. And so it can cause a lot of disruptions in that sleep architecture, some people call it. Now, I guess stage shifts, they do refer to transitions between the sleep stages. Older adults tend to experience more frequent shifts between sleep stages during the night, which can also contribute to fragmented sleep and frequent awakenings as well. And now we also have for some, there might be that reduction in melatonin. And I'm going to come back to that when we talk about the impact of medication. This can influence the timing of which we start to feel sleepy. When we don't have as much melatonin available in the nighttime, it means that we can stay awake for a lot longer despite wanting to. And also affect the quality of sleep, the ability to enter those stage 3 and 4 phases of sleep. And so it can make it really difficult to get that good quality sleep we want to see. So overall, as we get older, we become a lot more sensitive to a lot of different things in our environment. We also become very sensitive to hormonal changes. We become sensitive to light, climate. All these things can affect both our circadian rhythm and our sleep cycle. So I'm not going to cut to the core of all these things, but I am going to hone in on this, the role of pain. So pain can affect us in a lot of different ways. Pain can make it challenging to find a comfortable sleep position, which can delay the onset of sleep. If you have hip or spinal arthritis, you probably find it difficult to lie in a certain way. If you have stiffness in the hip, it might limit your mobility, making it really difficult to actually change positions smoothly in the night without discomfort and without an awakening. So this is, just some of the very few of the many ways pain can actually cause awakenings during the night as you change positions or wake up due to discomfort. Now, the reason why we do want to talk about pain management for sleep is that it can prevent us from getting that restorative stage 3 and stage 4 sleep stages. And so that's going to be important when it comes to exploring pain relief and strategies that are going to work for you. So what do we know about arthritis and sleep? Is that many people struggle to get enough good quality sleep. Some studies have explored the relationship between rheumatoid arthritis and sleep, and from their studies, they've estimated that 80% of people with rheumatoid arthritis have difficulty sleeping, whether it's difficulty with the onset of sleep, latency, or both. Most agreeing that this can lead to actually hurting more the very next day. There are some other studies that look at people specifically with osteoarthritis and have been found to experience sleep problems, particularly insomnia, daytime sleepiness, and overall shorter durations of sleep. So we can imagine that with a shorter duration of sleep, there would hardly be any stage 3 and stage 4 sleep happening. So what we recognise is that there is a bit of a catch-22 situation. Arthritis can make it difficult to sleep, but sleep deprivation can also worsen arthritis. Some researchers say that this seems to happen because insomnia activates parts of the brain that are more sensitive to pain and mutes the parts that are supposed to help us cope with the pain. So this is why if you're affected by pain during the night, you should really be getting yourself checked for sleep quality problems and be treated appropriately through a healthcare provider. So sometimes my arthritis is worse at nighttime, my arthritis has been ruining my sleep. Is this you? We get asked this question a lot. Why does my pain get worse at night? And so I do hope by this part of the presentation, we're starting to understand this a little bit better. So let's get into it a little bit more detail. Remember how we spoke about cortisol being the stress hormone and how it helps us adapt to stress and reduce inflammation? Cortisol levels, they peak in the morning, but they're often lower at night. So sometimes when we have elevated levels of inflammation or in a particular joint or our hands, we don't have as much of that hormone available to help us suppress the inflammation. And so this is what can maybe lead us to feel more pain at night time. If you've been sleeping still in one position, this can actually cause joints to stiffen up during the night as well. It can cause you to awaken prematurely and disrupt those sleep cycles. So that's kind of speaking to what's happening during the sleep. But we have to also think that your sleep hygiene is all inclusive of what you do to prepare for bed. It's also what you do in the morning and throughout the day. If you're not moving around as much, and now at nighttime, we do tend to be a little less active. We do tend to wind down. We do tend to sit behind the telly, maybe read our books, which isn't a bad thing, but we're not being active. We're not moving our joints. This is why if you're not exercising or being active throughout the day, it can be even worse. But if you're not moving those joints, it has cumulative effects that can stiffen the joints. It can cause discomfort and it can cause pain. So when you're getting up to go to bed, or if you're wanting to move in bed and switch positions, it can be a little trickier to do so. Another reason is that the pain threshold, it can be lower at night, and it kind of ties in with what we said about cortisol being lower at nighttime. We also have the role of melatonin, which has some analgesic properties, but when it comes to, melatonin being available, that's very individual. There are things that can impact on its production, and if there's not as much available, and we don't get a good quality of sleep, we find it hard to get to bed. It makes that pain a little bit more louder in a way. It does increase it and it makes us more sensitive. You've also got that compounded by reduced distraction. During the day, you're likely to be engaged in a lot of different activities. You're probably socializing, you're probably busy with your friends, with family, working. All of these can serve as distractions. Now, if you're busy throughout the day, your brain is focusing on tasks, it's focusing on activities and interactions that you're engaging in, and it takes away that perception of pain. It can help reduce it. At night, everything is a lot quieter, it's a lot slower, there are fewer distractions. This can lead to you becoming a bit more aware of the pain that you're experiencing. It's not that the level of pain has changed. The only difference is that at nighttime, you're probably noticing it a lot more than what you were during the day. And it's all because we don't have that distraction to take away from the pain, and that can make us focus on it a lot easier. So how does sleep deficiency affect you? What happens when you don't get enough sleep or a good quality sleep? You've woken up through the night. You're brave and Sarah, grumpy, probably finding ourselves a little bit more snappier, foggy brain, reduced cognition. Hard to do simple tasks. Does anyone notice that their sleep might be a little bit more intensified? Has anyone paid attention to that? Confidence. What I want to really explain today is the relationship between sleep and pain. So from what we know in the research is that they seem to share similar pathways in neurotransmitters. Neurotransmitters are like chemical messengers in the body. They control our mood, they communicate with pain signals, they produce natural painkillers, they can either energize us, wake us up, or slow us down completely, prevent us from doing our morning tasks, make us sleepy. In the body, when something is lacking or slowing down or deficient, something else is happening in the opposite way. Something else is being dialed up. And what happens to these neurotransmitters is that they lose their ability to do the things that they need to do to keep us functioning, keep us healthy, keep us happy, and optimize our well-being. Why these are all relevant, I want you to think of sleep deficiency like turning up that volume of pain. When you don't get enough sleep, imagine you're turning up that volume dial on your pain. The body becomes more sensitive and reactive to it. So even little aches, pains, stiffness can seem a lot bigger, a lot louder than what they actually are. When you're getting a good sleep, it's actually like turning down that pain volume knob that makes things hurt a little bit less and helps you feel better overall. So the word for this sensitivity to pain is actually known as hyperalgesia. So these might look familiar to some of you, and sometimes they're going to be your absolute key to dialing down that pain volume dial. So there are indirect ways that medication can affect sleep. They all have their pros, but they've all got their cons as well. And while they can help you get to sleep by reducing pain, reducing inflammation, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but they can have other effects that prevent you from getting that truly restorative, good quality sleep. Anti-inflammatories, for example, not only do they have, gastrointestinal side effects, can leave us feeling a little bit upset in the stomach. Some research suggests they can actually suppress the production of melatonin, that natural sleepy hormone. We really don't have optimal levels of that melatonin level. We don't see that drop in core body temperature that we want to see, which is supposedly why it makes it all that much harder to fall asleep and achieve a deeper state of non-REM sleep. Opioids are very strong pain relievers and are meant to help a lot with severe arthritis pain. When this pain is under control, don't get us wrong, it can help us, um, you know, get to sleep and initiate that. But what some more recent research suggests is that they may have some involvement in our central nervous system and in our brains that actually make us more sensitive to pain. So are able to turn up that volume of pain in the long run. So over the course of time, it can actually lead us to feeling worse. Antidepressants are a really interesting one because they're more commonly being used to treat chronic pain and osteoarthritis. Sometimes they're used to treat insomnia, but how they treat treat insomnia or reduce pain, we don't fully understand it. The evidence is very limited, but it could be that they're acting on neurotransmitters in the pathways that are responsible for communicating pain signals. It could be that it helps reduce anxiety and depression, in which poor sleep is a very common symptom. We don't understand its primary pathway in terms of how it helps, but it's going to be very individual for people depending on what's driving the pain, what's impacting your sleep. And there are a lot of different antidepressants. Some are used to treat insomnia, others can actually cause insomnia. So if you're someone who's taking antidepressants and you're struggling with your sleep, this could be a conversation to actually have with the doctor and discuss its impact on you. Sometimes it's worth doing a medication review and just seeing if exploring those options. So insomnia is a sleep disorder that afflicts many people. I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail on that today, but sometimes it is linked back to the pain we endure. Sometimes it's linked to the medications we're actually taking. These are just a few of the many medications that we know of the side effects being insomnia. Beta blockers, if you've heard of those before, or if you take them, they're usually used to treat high blood pressure or heart rhythm problems. They can actually interfere with sleep by causing nightmares, vivid dreams, reducing melatonin. Thyroxine is another common one if you have hypothyroidism. You might have been warned that one of the side effects is insomnia. If it's not properly adjusted to the right dosage, it can actually cause hyperactivity, nervousness, and difficulty getting to sleep. With the corticosteroid injections, that's something we take for inflammatory types of arthritis. If some of you have had them before, you've probably noticed it's hard to get to sleep that night. It's usually because of a few reasons. One being it suppresses the production of melatonin. Secondly, it kind of mimics cortisol, and so it can activate certain parts of our endocrine system that send your body into fight or flight mode. So it can disrupt that body clock and sleep cycle significantly. So now we should have a baseline understanding of why and how pain can affect sleep. And so while there are a lot of ways sleep can affect pain negatively, it can have very positive effects on pain. And that's what I want to focus on now. We've reached the part of the presentation when we can actually talk about our sleep, what to do about our sleep issues. So let's talk about sleep hygiene. I hope we've heard of this before, but it's basically how we define good sleep. It involves looking at the lifestyle, the environment, your behaviors, not just leading up to bedtime, but what you're doing in the morning and throughout the day. So we mentioned this before, but there are a lot of things that can affect our sleep. So what we want to recognize, is it a sleep disorder or is it something that we are doing throughout the day? Could it be something that we're doing just before bed that could be affecting our sleep? Sometimes we're getting enough sleep, but we don't recognize there's a problem. If you're not waking up feeling refreshed, you probably want to explore the primary nature of that. and what's causing those sleep disturbances so you can get to it sooner. And the GP is excellent to start those conversations with. You might want to actually enroll into a sleep study. They're often that's often a very cost-effective way of actually understanding the sleep quality, your patterns a little bit better. If you're a daytime napper, identifying why you need those naps is going to be really important for putting in on. Is it because of the sleep from the night before? Or is it a part of your routine where you're able to actually take control of it? This might actually seem like a silly one, but only sleep when you're sleeping. So pay attention to your body's natural signals of sleepiness. Don't force yourself to go to bed if you're not feeling genuinely tired. And that goes for napping as well. Don't force yourself to nap just because it's a part of your routine or you're trying to conserve energy for later on. Sometimes when you're in pain, you probably just want to sleep it off, go to bed. But you'd probably just notice that it can lead to that lingering in bed. You can feel tired and then get to bed and then you're wide awake. We've definitely seen that before. But this can actually make it a lot more difficult to sleep. The general advice is to really just get up, make sure you're moving around, do some light stretching, maybe even just reading a book. Do something to unwind, but also make sure you're optimizing the conditions around you. Make sure those lights are dimmed. You haven't got any artificial light. The heater isn't on full blast. Your Kindle or iPad isn't blasting with blue light. There's simple things you can do when you're in bed, you're feeling wide awake. Those are just some things that you can implement to help prevent that lingering of sleep in the bed. So caffeine is very interesting because if we love our coffee, we love tea, chocolate, soft drinks, all of these things have caffeine in them. And the thing about caffeine is it doesn't actually hit us until later on in the night when we're actually trying to go to bed. So it does have cumulative effects in the body. And I guess a good starting point is actually to be aware of how much caffeine you're having. Everything we eat in the day actually has an impact on our sleep. And so it's good to actually pay attention to how many cups of coffee you're having, how many teas you're having, chocolate, soft drinks, and maybe try switching to a decaffeinated option. Something we don't realize has a lot of caffeine is tea. Sometimes switching to a herbal tea, something like a tea with a little bit of valerian root or a chamomile just before bed, they're going to be a lot better options than our black English tea or green tea. So alcohol is very interesting because some people find it helps them actually doze off. And there's no doubt that alcohol has sedative effects, but it can actually prevent you from entering those stage 3 and stage 4 phases of sleep. And it can prevent you from getting that rapid eye movement sleep. So all of these are going to be crucial for cognitive function, the next day, your performance, your memory, preventing a foggy brain. Alcohol before bed can usually lead to a disruption in those sleep cycles, and it can lead to fragmented sleep. It means you're not getting the rejuvenation that we need, and it can also exacerbate current sleep disorders. So if you're someone who struggles with sleep apnea and you're snoring, alcohol actually relaxes the muscles in the throat, so it can actually worsen those symptoms and lead to rebound insomnia. Before we touch on core body temperature, and so we know it plays some role in sleep. So the optimal room temperature is said to be around 18 to 22 degrees. If you have control of that, they're the ideal conditions to kind of set that temperature to. This range is supposedly able to support our body's natural temperature drop during sleep, which can help prevent us from feeling too hot or too cold, which would increase the likelihood of us awakening during the night. So that temperature control is one thing we can actually do to optimize those conditions. At the very beginning of today's session, we were having a bit of a laugh about screen time. So phones, computers, tablets, we really turn this message up. And I guess it is 7:55 now. If you have a night mode on your tablet or your laptop, now's the time to be switching it on. When we talk about sleep hygiene, reducing the screen time is essential. Usually these screens emit blue light, which actually disrupt the melatonin and cortisol hormones that help us fall asleep and then maintain our sleep. So please try to keep your bedroom a screen-free zone. If you're someone who likes to read on your iPad or Kindle, just make sure those settings are reduced or switch to night mode. Most electronics these days give you that option. So if you're someone who finds it very tricky to remove screens before bed, it's a little hack you can try. Now, getting regular, waking up the same time every morning, going to bed at the same time every night. Your bedtime routine is what really helps synchronize our circadian rhythm. So brushing our teeth before bed, combing our hair before bed, having a consistent routine is what really helps it align with that internal and external environment. It helps us just better recognize when it's time to go to bed and when it's time to wake up. And so it can lead to more energy during the day and getting a better quality of sleep. Now, for pain, we don't want you going to bed in pain. If you're having a bad day or you're just really struggling to find comfort, make sure you take your pain relief before you go to bed. You can have this conversation with your doctor about a slow release pain medication. I guess that's why we talk a lot about osteopanadol being effective for nighttime. When it's a slow release, it should give you a lot longer lasting effect. And it's a pretty good just go-to over-the-counter option for nighttime. You can also see if heat works for you, whether it's for a topical cream or a heat pack. If that's going to help turn down the volume of pain, don't wait to take it. It could be physio cream, Tiger Balm, Voltaren, Wig-Bag. These kind of methods have shown to interfere with pain signals. So to make it, it can be quite soothing. And so we encourage applying it just before you get into bed. If you do awaken through the night due to pain, keep it nearby so you can easily apply it without having to switch on the lights and move around too much with artificial bright lights on. So make sure it's easily accessible. Medication timing is always going to be very important. So just make sure, you time your pain relief correctly. You also time it to coincide with your bedtime routine. If you find yourself tossing, turning, difficulty just switching off, you're focusing on the pain, just distraction, whether it's through deep breathing, stretching, reading, even journaling. So having a little book by your bedside table. These techniques are excellent for taking away the worry and the nervousness that can make getting to sleep a lot harder. Reducing that overall stimulation, especially if you're someone who panics, can make it a lot easier to not just promote that onset of sleep, but that helps with that sleep latency. If you're finding yourself focusing in on the pain, not only can it actually exacerbate the pain, it can worsen the insomnia. So if you're feeling a bit overstimulated, those are just some of the more natural kind of techniques you can try and see if it works for you. If you're using pillows for support, this will entirely depend on what position you actually sleep in or where your arthritis is actually hitting. So if you have hip arthritis and you're sleeping on this side, you probably want to have a supportive pillow between your knees. It's really all about aligning your hips and reducing the pressure on the affected hip. So if you have arthritis in the knees, you might actually want to try sleeping on your back and using a supportive pillow or a cushion under your knees to help relieve that pain and that pressure in the knees. Sleeping on your back with your knees up on the pillow, it may also help with reducing strain on your lower back. Not everyone is actually a back sleeper or a side sleeper, so just experiment with that pillow placement to find what works best for you based on your specific needs and the product you sleep in. You can even talk to a physio who can help you navigate that. If the arthritis is actually in your hands, it's in your wrists, fingers, it's something that is often recommended are thermal gloves. So that gentle compression of the gloves might not only help with the swelling and mobility, but reducing those pain signals. They might be able to actually soothe the sensations you're feeling, might help you feel a bit more cozier, help you get a more comfortable night's rest. So if you're finding your hand arthritis worsening at night, try implementing this before going to bed. Sleeping medication is interesting. So we know there's a lot of sleep medication available and it can help with, I guess, fast tracking the onset of our sleep, but we want to discuss this thoroughly with the doctor first. Another thing is we don't really want to rely on them. We want to help our bodies regulate internally and think with the natural cues of the environment. This is what's going to help promote a normal body clock and be a lot better in the long run. Sometimes medications can interfere with the body's natural sleep homeostat, can interfere with those hormones we mentioned. It can disrupt the sleeping cycle. There's always going to be some knock-on effects that we see as a result from taking medication. Whether they're sleeping pills or antidepressants, they all interact with our nervous system. And there are times they can absolutely benefit us when we're in absolute need of relief, or say if lack of sleep is a symptom of anxiety or depression. They have their place, but you also want to make sure that you're helping your body fall back into a natural sleeping pattern. So we want to do our very best to control those external drivers that can affect sleep. So we do want to get to that root cause of what's causing the troubles with the onset of sleep, what's causing troubles maintaining that sleep and achieving that stage 3 and stage 4 sleep. And instead of, I guess, increasing reliance on medication, we want to actually explore other strategies that are going to help promote a natural sleeping pattern. So I can walk you through the research and evidence-based advice and give you all the tips and tricks, but I do also want to hear from you. And if there's something you do or you have done in the past that helped you get a better night's sleep, I will actually invite you to share what you've done that really works for you. You can switch off your microphones now. Who wants to go first? Does anything work effectively for you?
I find milk,
Milk?
hot milk with honey in it, or rice milk, malt syrup.
Milk is wonderful. I guess milk, cheese, those dairy products. Something we don't actually speak about enough is the role calcium plays when it comes to falling asleep. Calcium actually helps really relax the nervous system. It can actually help us feel a little bit more sleepier.
Is it the tryptophan that helps you sleep?
Yeah. So magnesium sleeping tablets works with some. You read for half an hour before bed to fall asleep. So that light reading, very effective. Pillows to reduce pressure on the joints. Very safe. So what I'm showing you on the screen here is a sleep diary. Has anyone seen a sleep diary before? So these are very useful tools if you struggle with your sleeping pattern. Of course, you might want to discuss sleeping issues with a GP, but first, starting with understanding what your sleep issues are can make that conversation a little easier and a lot more effective. So a sleep diary is used to actually track things like what time you're going to bed, what time we're waking up, what's waking you up, and how many times you wake up throughout the night. They're there to actually shed some light on the quality of your sleep, but what could be affecting your sleep as well. So these are just online downloadable tools. This one on the right-hand side has come from Sleep Australia, an excellent website where they've got a lot of information and recommendations for sleep hygiene if you definitely want to learn more. But having a tool like this beside your bedside table and filling it out consistently can give you a lot of insight, and so it can help you better understand what's going on so you can actually assess that sleep quality a little bit more accurately. So we've got some websites here where you can go to for some more information. We've got Sleep Foundation, Sleep Health Foundation, This Way Up, ResMed. I would encourage you guys to take a screenshot or access these websites once I send out the PowerPoint presentation. They have a lot of interesting resources and tools you can download for your own use. And here we have the summary. So what we've covered is that our circadian rhythm and our sleep-wake cycle, it changes over the course of our life and it changes with age. Getting enough sleep is important, but the quality of sleep you get is even more important. We need enough sleep and we need to be making sure we're trying to get into that stage 3 and stage 4 non-REM sleep. There's a strong relationship between inflammation, pain, and sleep, and how that affects our perception of pain as well. Now, sleep deficiency, it can certainly increase the perception of pain, but there are so many tips and tricks we can implement to help improve our sleep. And, you know, if we can get on top of our sleep, we can help with our pain management. And so definitely, if you're quite worried or concerned about your sleep, you should definitely be having a conversation with your doctor. If you're taking medication, ask your doctor or pharmacist about them and explore your options. But the sleep is going to be very important for managing that pain. Do you have any questions for me?
I'm just wondering about when you take anti-inflammatories, if you take them in the morning, does it make any difference to sleep? You know, the time of day you take it?
It's not really in the morning. So remember how we said we have cortisol, that natural hormone that works to suppress inflammation. That's a natural bodily response. When we take medication on top of that, it's going to help with that increased sensation of pain. So sometimes we have bad days, sometimes we have good days. If you're having a bad day, that extra anti-inflammatory medication is going to help reduce that pain. In terms of if it affects sleep, it's only if you're consequently, you know, taking those anti-inflammatories multiple times throughout the day over the course of a week or 2 weeks. So it's all really dependent on the dosage and the timing.
Thank you.
Is there a normal or average time in which people should be getting to sleep? When does that tip over into insomnia?
When it tips over into insomnia, if you're getting 6 hours or less every night, and this has been consecutive for days or weeks, it's starting to affect your well-being throughout the day, that's when you definitely want to get assessed and see if it could be insomnia.
Thank you.
So I guess if you're worried about insomnia, you're concerned you might have any kind of sleep disorder, you can go to those websites that are listed before, because usually they highlight the criteria in which you can assess yourself against and you can self-report on. And that's why, again, that sleep diary, it will really help provide you with that information around your sleep patterns. You'll be able to see how it measures against that criteria.
Yes, I rarely get more than six hours, but I find that I'm not hungover or sleepy or badly affected the next day. I seem to be fresh in the morning and able to get into things. So but it's only about 6 hours. But it doesn't, as I say, I don't feel hungover. I don't feel as though I need more sleep when I wake up. I don't feel groggy. I get into things, but it has worried me that I don't get the 7 to 8 hours. I'm 71.
Okay, so remember how earlier I said a lot of us can cope with less sleep? It's fine. Usually when they're assessing a sleep disorder, they also look at the symptoms you could be presenting with: daytime fatigue, irritability, that difficulty concentrating, the brain fog. All of that gets factored into a diagnosis as well.
Right.
But if it's something that's concerning you, that's why we encourage you to go to a doctor.
Right. Thank you.
Can you show those websites again?
Yes, I can bring them up here. Right here, if you want to write them down and you've got a pen and paper on you.
Yep.
Thank you, everyone, for coming tonight.
Thank you. Thank you.
Can I just say something? In a sense, it might sound silly, but there was a stage when I was having trouble going to sleep. I used a form of sort of meditation, in the sense that I'd be laying in bed, feel my body relaxing, and I used to think of the word relax in different ways in my mind. As I said, it might sound silly, but I found at that stage it seemed to work for me, and I seemed to fall asleep by thinking of the word relax, and you know what I mean?
Thank you.
I just thought I'd mention that.
Thank you.
For the talk. I thoroughly enjoyed it and it took back a lot.
Meditation
Thank you.
is something I definitely should have spoken more about, because it's so valuable to promoting a better sleep. It kind of falls in that regime of like distraction. You know, when I talk about journaling or light reading, that's a form of mindfulness, but meditation itself is amazing for regulating our circadian rhythm, just getting a more consistent sleep-wake cycle, promoting that relaxation, and it can definitely help. It can positively impact sleep in so many ways.
Thanks very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much too. Have a nice evening.
Thank you.
Yes.
Everyone.
Can I ask again about anti-inflammatories?
Yeah, of course.
I take mine usually at night, hoping that it will stop the pain during the night. Would it be better to take it in the morning, do you think? Or doesn't it make much difference?
Oh, it again goes on what type of pain you're experiencing and how severe it is. I think it's best to always ask your healthcare provider around those specific questions, just because you do need to have a better understanding of the medical history, what anti-inflammatory medication it is. It's definitely always best to go straight to them, because there can be potential interaction. So that's where they can give you all the good advice about what you need to be doing in terms of timing to get the most out of that medication, and also factor in ways to improve your sleep.
Yes, I must say, when I do take my anti-inflammatory medication, I must not lie down within 30 minutes of taking it. So I always take it in the morning with food at breakfast, and then I just take that one a day. But it would be really bad for me to take that at night immediately before trying to go to sleep, because it has very bad implications and side effects. It's moxifam or something. I can't remember the name of it, but you do have to be careful. And I recommend you, as the lady here says, go to your GP or chemist and make absolutely sure.
Absolutely. So we always want to go straight to our healthcare provider in terms of with questions if you're not sure about the best time to take it. And it sounds like you've got a bit of a routine going on. We're concerned about side effects. They're definitely the questions to actually discuss thoroughly with both the doctor and pharmacist.
Yes.
Okay,
Thanks
you.
again. Good night. Thank you.
Good night.
Excuse me, can you put up the websites again that we can look for sleep, please?
Yeah.
It was a bit too quick.
Not showing? Oh, I don't know why it's not showing. Sorry. Is this working now?
No, we've just got the summary.
Yeah. The
Was
sleep,
just
found-
before that.
the sleep foundation. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
it.
that's it. Thank you.
Oh, there we go.
Oh,
That's it.
It's made.
Good.
You have those websites.
Thank you.
And we don't have any more questions. I would love to get all your feedback as well. We will have a link going out to our Survey Monkey. So if you could please fill that out, we'd love to hear your thoughts, your feedback, recommendations for the next webinar and what you'd like to cover. We definitely love to get your input.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Great.